are timeless, in my opinion. I know most people say, oh, it's just a bunch of walking. No, it's more than that. It is more than that. I could go on, but again, I'm doing a TheDeathMetaller Cinemas episode on reviewing the series of Rings of Power.
Welp, we're finally recording it.
It was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it.
Hey everybody, this is Atticus the TheDeathMetaller, and welcome to probably one of the most highly anticipated episodes of the TheDeathMetaller Cinemas that I have been absolutely putting on the back burner for God knows how fucking long. But yes, this episode is where we are going to be doing a review on Amazon's Lord of the Rings of Power. Now, as you probably saw in the beginning of this video that I mentioned this on my Gatekeeping Is Necessary video, that I was going to do a TheDeathMetaller Cinemas episode on this series. And true to my word, I have watched all the episodes, and boy do I got a lot to say over here. And I know it has been a long time. It is long overdue, given on how so many people were making videos on this series due to all the shit that happened in my life. I mean, you know, like when I was watching the early episodes, I was at the ICU with my dad. So, yeah, y'all know I've been through some shit. But finally, I think I have some time to shoot this episode. And by the time that I am shooting this episode, it is 3/16 day, so I'm shooting it because Stone Cold told me to do so. So, without further ado, let us begin the review. Now, it is no stranger that yours truly over here unfathomably loves the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And why wouldn't I? When I first saw the trailer for The Fellowship of the Ring while watching the first Harry Potter film, I was fucking hooked. But I did not watch till early 2002 after playing the Two Towers game on PS2, where the love really took into high fucking gear. The Lord of the Rings trilogy was directed by the Kiwi director named Peter Jackson, who made a few good, decent horror films like that of The Frighteners. But it was his work of that of the Lord of the Rings trilogy that would make him a household name. And why is that, you may ask? Well, let's just look at the numbers, shall we? Fellowship of the Ring grossed over $897.7 million. The Two Towers, $947.5 million. And last, but certainly not least, The Return of the King, a whopping $1.146 billion fucking dollars at the box office. Also, not to mention a stellar cast, using his native country of New Zealand for the shooting of the film, an absolutely passionate crew from the cameras, CGI, practical effects, costume design, as well as a fantastic story from top to fucking bottom, receiving over 475 of all 800 nominations, making it the most goated film trilogy from top to fucking bottom. And of course, Peter would later bring up for the straight to DVD releases of the ever more superior extended editions of the trilogy, which, yes, it's long as fuck, but it's so goddamn fucking worth it. And of course, Jackson would later make the Hobbit trilogy from 2012 to 2014. Though it really soured the mood of all fans, it does have a good following of people such as myself, which we will talk later. So when I heard that there was going to be a series on the ever so beloved Lord of the Rings, I was excited, seeing that this was set in place of the Second Age of Middle Earth, which, holy fucking shit, It got me so pumped. But then I forgot, Netflix released the Witcher series, which left a sour taste in my mouth. Thank fucking God Cavill left. So part of me really gave the benefit of the doubt that they would not fuck this shit up. Up until I found out that Amazon bought the rights to the Tolkien household and then followed up with the series poster right here. So how do we go from anticipation to disappointment? Well, as always, our Lord and Savior, white nationalist Gandalf the racist would always say,
let's find out.
Before seeing that poster earlier, as well as the trailers, I told everyone on social media, as well as my gatekeeping video that I made last year, that I, ATTM, was gonna watch all of the episodes through to make a genuinely good and honest review. And as what my friend SkullRepper4900 once told me, the only way to have a very strong opinion, whether it be a video game or a film or TV show, is that if you watch or play it first. So given that I did that watching Cuties, I feel like this was going to be a breeze after the atrocity that was Cuties, right? The pilot episode actually begins where the settings of the Silmarillion go full swing, which would be so fucking awesome if Peter Jackson actually did a trilogy of the Silmarillion, but I don't think it'll be a trilogy. It'll be going on for a long time. So, yeah, it begins in the Silmarillion. Alas, all we got was a snippet of an epic clash between the forces of good and evil. Centuries pass, and Morgoth is defeated, but replacing him is, of course, the bad boy we all know and love, the Dark Lord, Sauron. And it is up to Galadriel to stop the new Dark Lord to swallow all of Middle-earth once more. Wait, did I say Galadriel? Yes, I did say Galadriel. Yeah, apparently the fair, wise, and beautiful Galadriel is some flawless, badass Mary Sue while delving in on the series. Like, I'm not even kidding. She goes all crazy badass on a fucking snow troll, while the other elves are just absolutely incompetent. I wish I was making this shit up. The series is told in several different plot points while the story goes. Galadriel with her Mary Sue-ness, Elrond trying to get the mithril from his homeboy Durin in Moria, Harfoot stumbling upon a wizard man falling from the sky, Elendor and Isildur in Numenor, and the villagers in the Southlands, which would later become, actually I'll just save it for fucking later. So all the plots that we all see happen, this here, that there, Sauron where, Sauron there, epic as in kind of half-assed battle, all leading up to the climactic end where it felt like that I have wasted a good chunk of my time watching this series. It left a very bitter taste in my mouth, which really pained me because there were actually a few good qualities of this series. Yes, I am dead serious. There were some good qualities, but they're a minority compared to with the bad. And on this episode of the TheDeathMetaller Cinemas, I'm going to compare a fuck ton of this series with The Lord of the Rings as well as The Hobbit. Yes, even The Hobbit. I'm just gonna knock this section out the ballpark first because this happens to be the only good thing about this series. And yes, it is the soundtrack. Now, we all remember that the Lord of the Rings trilogy along with The Hobbit was scored by this man upon men. One of, if not the goats of movie soundtracks, Howard motherfucking Shore. I mean, the guy is a legend. He is up there with the likes of Hans Zimmer, John Williams, and Ramin Djawadi, making some of the most timeless tracks of the entire trilogy, including this right here. So with the making of Rings of Power, there had to be a guy who would compose such an epic score like Howard, right? And actually, Amazon chose very well by hiring Bear McCreary. Bear McCreary happens to be a rising heavyweight while creating scores. And my god, this guy has a fucking resume. He has been in the likes of Battlestar Galactica, The Walking Dead, the recent Godzilla Monsterverse with King of the Monsters, God of War, and C. By the way, this is an absolutely dope track. The intro of the series is so fucking dope. Bear happens to make a lot of scores for a lot of shows, movies, and game soundtracks. But how well did he do Rings of Power? Actually, he fucking nailed it. What's crazy about the intro of the series is that it's done not just by him, but also the legendary Howard Shore himself. But the rest of the score has Bear's hands all over. My favorite track happens to be the name of the most insufferable character of the show, Galadriel. Now, we will talk about Galadriel later down the line, but you all need to hear this right now. But does the soundtrack match the amazing script, plot, characters, and wardrobe? Oh boy, we're gonna find out soon. It has been stated by some articles that the total cost of the Rings of Power was that of a whopping $1 billion, with the first season let alone costing a staggering $462 million. And they poured in a lot of love and care to the production value. So with that, you would think that Amazon, being one of, if not the most wealthiest corporations alive today, and they poured in a lot of love and care to the production value of the product, right? With the costumes, the CGI, practical effects, location, etc. Well, it's a hit and miss for me. Now, just like the original trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy before the series, it was shot in New Zealand, which is a bonus. I will give them credit. Most of the linens and clothing used by the cast was just downright beautiful in some regards, but what got me in a particular nitpick mood was the fact that the armor looked really fucking half-assed. For instance, the Dwarven and Númenórean armor look lazily made. Now, most of you would argue with me that this was the Second Age, but if you can look at the original trilogy, even The Hobbit, you can tell that Weta Workshop put in a lot of their heart and soul with the arms and armor. Even the chainmail was painstakingly made by the crew's own blood, sweat, and tears.
We chose to look after the design, the fabrication and the on-set operation of the special makeup effects and prosthetics, the armour, the weapons, the creatures and the miniatures.
So his workload over the 3 or 4 years that he has been involved has just been phenomenal.
Employing mainly young people whose primary expertise was not in filmmaking, but whose talents had been recognised by Richard Taylor because they were artists of one sort or another.
The Weta Workshop is very much a physical and spiritual extension of Richard Taylor and Tanya Roger.
Hell, even the Dwarven soldiers in the Battle of the Five Armies had far better crafted armor than the half-assed armor worn by the dwarves in Rings of Power. But in hindsight, the elven armor at least was quite accurate. Now, I know I'm the sole minority here, but I actually did like the Hobbit trilogy despite all of its flaws and being saturated with CGI. What got a lot of people worked up over was that the orcs were all CGI, lacking any practical effects, which I can understand. But the reality is that practical effects is a slowly dying process given on how time consuming it is to put the shit all over on the actors and actresses. But you gotta give tremendous respect to film TV shows willing to keep that gravy train rolling. With Rings of Power, they brought back the practical effects on the orcs, which, not gonna lie, the orcs looked pretty dope on the show. The CGI was really a hit and miss. When it came to major locations like Moria and Numenor, by the way, Numenor looked fucking amazing. It looked a bit like Atlantis. I mean, Numenor is a bit like Atlantis in Tolkien lore. Alas, the CGI was average until you fucking saw this fucking hellspawn. Like, what in the affirmative fuck is that thing? It looked like a mutated chihuahua more than a fucking warg. Oh my god. Like, what I'm trying to say is that for a multi-billion corporation with boatloads of money, they should have put the best of the best in regards to practical effects, props, wardrobe, etc. Yet it really looked so half-assed. I mean, the boys had a lot of care into their series rather than the Rings of Power. Like, holy shit. There are a lot of things to really criticize this show for, and one of the biggest ones was how bland and boring the characters were, and that is really saying something. I remember watching it all the way through, not feeling any ounce of care in the goddamned world for each and every character on the show. I remember watching it all the way through, not feeling any ounce of care in the goddamned world for each and every character on the show. And the show was trying to make you give a flying goddamn, but failed miserably for my dumbass that even decided to watch the show all the way through. Because you had great characters like Galadriel and Elrond featured in the show, two characters that were played by the legendary actors Cate Blanchett and Hugo Weaving, who brought forth phenomenal performances. But how did Morfydd Clark and Robert Aramayo fare? I would say the exact opposite. Galadriel was the main protagonist of the show, obviously. Like, she is one of the oldest, wisest, and most fairest beings in all of Middle-earth by the time the Fellowship of the Ring begins. Right from the start of watching the show, Galadriel was just one of the most unlikable characters for me. Like, they tried to make Galadriel this absolute badass Mary Sue that can inspire girl power for some reason. All they really ended up was just an absolutely unlikable character that is essentially Connor Kenway except with a vagina.
Where is Charles Lee? Charles Lee. Charles Lee, Charles Lee. Where are you, Charles? Charles Lee, Charles Lee. Where is Charles Lee? Charles Lee, Charles Lee. Charles Lee, Charles Lee. Where is Charles Lee gone?
I think my fellow Assassin's Creed fans can agree with me on that. Now, most people would say that I'm being sexist or misogynistic for bashing on a strong female character, but I mentioned this on my Game of Thrones Season 8 episode, that I have no problem with female characters like Arya Stark. Arya went through a lot of suffering and development into becoming the badass assassin that she would become later on in the series. Except, well, you know. As well as the amazing character Brienne of Tarth. Two great women who have tested their blades in combat. Granted, Arya had to work on hers while growing up, but Brienne was a knight that has seen and experienced combat. Most importantly, you gave a fuck about those two. With Galadriel, I did not see any of that. All I saw was an unlikable elf going out of her way to find the Dark Lord, acting like a bloodthirsty warmonger than the very Dark Lord himself. And oh, we'll get to the Dark Lord later on in this episode. What's even more astonishing is that everyone likes her in the end, after every encounter with her. Like, imagine meeting your new coworker on your first day on the job, and right from the start, she becomes an absolute menace and a raging demon, wanting to make sure that your time on this job is as miserable as possible. And after you're done with the shift and clock out, you say to yourself, you know what? I like this coworker. I'm gonna fit in quite well. That's how everyone fucking treats her. It's a shame because The Lord of the Rings was known for having some of the best characters, with the bromance of Frodo and Sam, the wise Gandalf, the dilemma of Aragorn fulfilling his destiny to become the king of men, as well as the impossible task that laid in front of the Fellowship. It was what made the original trilogy so memorable. But all we got was Galadriel being an insufferable cunt, Elrond trying to mend a neglected 20-year-off friendship of Prince Durin over some mithril, and a romance between Arondir and Bronwyn trying to mirror that of Aragorn and Arwen, while trying to save the Southlands, which, spoiler alert, it's fucking Mordor. And oh god, how Mordor become the land of shadow as it was, how it really became, just roll it.
What is that?
Oh, and the Harford characters. Do not get me fucking started on these dollar store Hobbit rejects. First off, the Harfords, let alone Hobbits, have no goddamn place at all in the Second Age of Middle-earth to begin with. Second of all, they're made specifically for people like me to be like, remember the Hobbits and shit? And finally, I do not give a shit over their dumbass migration with Gandalf the Homeless. Yeah, I'm just gonna say that the wizard that Nordia and her dumbass sister or friend found was Gandalf. I'm fucking calling it. The Harfoots had to really hammer it in for me on the nostalgia of the race of hobbits that were beloved by the fandom after the original and Hobbit trilogy. Another laughable thing about these characters was the Facebook Lord of the Ring pages who would pose about the Rings of Power saying how deep and how well written these characters were, when in truth, they were literally in denial mode, deep down knowing that this show was destroying everything that they loved for PC points. But you know, I fucking digress. Now, I wanted to get all that out of the way to focus on one of the biggest controversies of the show. The notion that we had black beardless dwarves, black dollar store hobbits, and black elves. Oh, and also Isildur was either brown or that he's been out in the sun way too long to have olive skin. This I knew from that poster I showed you earlier on this review that I was going to cause a lot of shit flinging. Let's do a little flashback on my cake keeping video.
And I know a lot of people are gonna come after me and say that, oh, you don't like POC characters in your beloved Lord of the Rings? Times have changed, Atticus the DeathMetaller. Why are you being so racist? And that's just one thing that I really need to bring out. So I got this quote over here, and it says, and it's probably from like the producers of the Rings of Power series that's gonna happen later in September, stating, "It felt only natural to us that an adaptation of the author's work would reflect what the world actually looks like," as in what the world actually looks like today, just not the original source material that J.R. Tolkien made. Now, this is what I find really ridiculous, because I remember watching the Witcher series, the first season, and I didn't finish the second season, because I just didn't really feel the vibe onto it. Now, don't get me wrong, Henry Cavill played a very good Geralt of Rivia, but it just didn't really feel like any of that. And so, when I see shit like this, it reminds me of something that, it reminds me of what Nerderotic said. And when she stated this, so a company buys the rights of this said thing, as in, for instance, Lord of the Rings, and in order to appease to an audience, which, a fan base, arguably the Lord of the Rings fan base, including mine, very loyal, very great fan base. Then you make it something that they did not ask for. You're literally like destroying something in their eyes that they've invested a lot of their time and energy onto this fandom. And since there's getting a lot of backlash, you go around saying like, oh my god, why are these guys getting so, why are they like, going crazy over this? This is a bigoted fan base. So essentially, it is something that is known as toxic fandom.
Now, I knew that this was going to be one of the major issues of this series, and it actually did work on how Amazon exploited a die-hard fan base's love for this franchise, bastardizing it to then paint the fan base as a bunch of racist bigots. Now, granted, yes, times are changing, and there are going to be shows and series where they're going to bring out a diverse cast of characters. It's usually the way things are when you are gaining equal employment opportunity for jobs, especially when you're working in film. But hear me out. Remember how much money the Lord of the Rings trilogy gained and all the awards it won? Seldom I did not hear any people saying that there are no black representation or Latinx representation or LGBTQ, PQ, HITK, PQ representation. None of that, because there was nothing really to criticize the trilogy about. I think the only criticism was that Peter Jackson left off some important characters of the books, which, understandable. But Atticus the DeathMetaller, there were black and Asian people in the Hobbits. Why'd you going crazy over that? That's because they were men. It's fun to speculate that those people were from the far east of the map of Middle-earth, probably from Far Harad or Rune. It's fun to speculate, and it made so much more sense to me. I would also like to bring up Count Dooku's video on the Hays Code, which was a set of rules that Hollywood had to abide by during the olden days. I'm not going to go into detail, watch it yourself, but around the 70s and 80s, film companies, producers, and directors gave fuck all on the Hays Code and made whatever the fuck they wanted, making such timeless classics like A Clockwork Orange, Rocky, and The Godfather. Now, why I say that is that I think the Hays Code has resurfaced again with a new set of rules. Rules as in there needs to be an established character of a different race, one character needs to be trans, and this other character needs to be white in order to be the bad guy, etc, etc, etc. Then you have a huge crowd of people hating the shit, which actually benefits, yes, benefits them in the long run, and I will explain why. This is going to piss off a lot of people on this next segment, and quite frankly, I don't give a fuck. It needs to be said. Rings of Power with its shitty characters, wardrobe, and somewhat decent CGI, minus that thing, is not a disaster. I mean, it is a waste of money, yes, made by one of the most powerful companies on earth today. In fact, it won. Why? Well, it's being renewed by a second season. Oh, but Atticus the DeathMetaller, it got so much negative fluck. Surely you're not pulling the shit out of your ass. Yeah, well, when the series started, a lot of people decided to pull off a huge negative score on Rotten Tomatoes. And I reckon that none of these idiots have seen it. Yes, Rings of Power is getting renewed a second season because it garnered a lot of feedback due to the sheer backlash and criticism working towards its favor. And yes, it also gained help from people such as myself making this video due to me watching it all the way through to make an honest review. But a good chunk of it was in most part done by people that hate watched it, made reviews without watching it, and spamming it with negative feedback after watching some of Neurotic's videos, or the Quartering flipping the fuck out over a black fucking mermaid being the equivalent of the white gender side. Yeah. It's funny how these guys are going around saying, we are not buying into this woke bullshit. The fans have spoken. The fans are not having it. The fans are fighting back. No, they aren't. It's just only you guys. Also, can you motherfuckers stop saying fucking woke? Like, seriously, ever since the boomers and politicians like my Governor Ron DeSantis kept saying the woke agenda has become insufferably autistic. I think Naked Ape was a self-fulfilling prophet on his New Year's resolution for white people back in 2017. Now, yes, I know that I followed Skull Ripper's notion of having a stronger opinion on watching a show/film or playing a video game, but after seeing the result of it as well as the constant backlash, hate watching from The Little Mermaid, Velma, and this dumpster fire, it's gonna keep coming.
Nobody cares about fucking diversity when it comes to M&Ms. They know it, you know it, and I know it. What they also know is how much buzz this kind of low-effort pandering will get, either from brainless people that think this is actually doing something, or from shitheads like you that scramble to tweet about it, or make a video with D-grade bottom-of-the-barrel humor. And then that gets every fucking moron talking about it. Cause the most interesting thing they have to talk about is how the M&Ms change their shoes. This in turn boosts their sales, makes up for past controversies, and leaves us as a more corporate-obsessed, soulless, and cultureless society.
But as I was suffering watching this abomination, I was also watching a phenomenal comeback. So not only was Rings of Power the only option of a series to watch during the summer/fall of 2022, HBO Max a month prior brought forth a new show, House of the Dragon, a prequel to the Game of Thrones franchise. Now, all of you remembered I made a review on the final season. If you have not, please watch it before watching this segment. If not, be my guest. I was still skeptical whether I wanted to watch it or not because I was still suffering from PTS8D, post-traumatic season 8 disorder. But I decided to give it a watch, and holy fucking motherfuck, I was impressed. Watching it felt like the flames of my love for Song of Ice and Fire were reignited by Dragonfire. Seeing the seeds lay out on the inevitable Targaryen civil war that would play out in the future seasons of the show. The plot, the characters, the layout, the soundtrack were all mixed together perfectly. Now I know all of you are gonna say this to me. Atticus the DeathMetaller, there were some pop characters in the House of the Dragon, and yet you're bashing it all over on the Rings of Power. Why are you giving this so much praise? Yes, I did. In fact, I love the Valerians in this series. Why? Well, first and foremost, all the pop characters in Rings of Power, like the other characters, I did not have feelings over. They just felt like they were the sake of being there. Meanwhile, you get a backstory of the Valerians, learn on how powerful of a house they were, as well as on how close they were to the Targaryens. Plus, it makes a lot more sense that they were black because, well, Corliss's ancestor may have shagged some sex authority booty instead of going sweet home Valeria with his sisters. Yes, they were Valerians. But one criticism I want to point out is that the question of the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's 3 sons, whom are all white.
Whose goddamn white baby is that?
So to make them black while everyone is acting all oblivious is just so fucking stupid. But above all, I thought some of the characters were great. Damon's unpredictability and badass, the Valerians' struggle to keep tight alliances as well as further friendships with the Targaryens, and nefarious plotting under Otto Hightower to gain more power while King Viserys tries to rule realm while slowly dying. By the way, Paddy Considine was fucking phenomenal. Just roll a clip.
I will sit the throne today. Your Grace. Oh, fine. I said I'm fine. Come on.
Essentially, House of Dragon was like WCW during its glory days, slamming the WWF on ratings during the Monday Night War. Yeah, I fucking went there.
Look.
The one part that actually aggravated me about this show was the big secret on who the Dark Lord Sauron was throughout the first season. Yes, Sauron. The bad guy, the Dark Lord himself, who would create the weapon of mass destruction on the trilogy we all know and love. Sauron. For a while, me and my friends tried to guess who the Dark Lord would be, up until we saw this image of what we thought Sauron was.
Don't be intimidated, Squidward. Try to imagine him in his underwear. Oh no, he's hot!
Which was actually funny because we all joked around that Sauron looked like this Slim Shady in drag looking head ass ready to start shooting up a school. But it was revealed later that the character was dubbed the Dweller, played by Bertie Sisson. They were also accompanied by also 2 individuals known as the Nomad and the Ascetic, searching for a homeless Gandalf, where they all thought he was Dark Lord himself, which was by far the dumbest plot twist that even made Shyamalan have a stroke. Then in episode 4, we see this dude thinking that he was Sauron, but turned out to be a servant to the Dark Lord himself named Adar. So that was off the list. At this point, everyone was making jokes on Facebook pages on who Sauron was.
Why, I'm
Sauron. What kind of fool do you take me for? He's Sauron. He's Sauron. You're Sauron. I'm Sauron. Are there any other Sauron I should know about? I'm out of here.
Until the very end, the finale, Halbrand, the dude who was with Galadriel the whole time, was the Dark Lord himself. Wow. Congrats. You waste a good fuck of my time to learn who the Dark Lord Sauron was. You waste a good fuck ton of time to watch a crazy Mary Sue elf go warmonger to find Sauron, only to quiver in fear seeing the enemy in the flesh. It really felt like a really huge Scooby-Doo episode on who Sauron was. Maury right now is shaking his head in disbelief. The Rings of Power had so much potential to show us what was going on in the Second Age, and to see our beloved Middle-earth before Bilbo, Frodo, Aragorn, Gollum, and so forth. What would have been an exciting and epic tale on how the rings were created and how it led to where we see the Fellowship. It all felt like a fanfiction, rather than an adaptation of Tolkien's work. The characters felt forced. They felt manufactured, and I had less of a connection to them to all of them. The wardrobe was okay, except for the decisions in making the armor. Cinematography and CGI was average at best. Well, except for the warg. And it just felt like a huge disaster watching it from start to finish. There were some pros and cons, but a lot of cons. It's a total damn shame that the Rings of Power is getting stuff ready for a second season. Rings of Power Season 1 gets a 3 out of 10 for this review. Now, this is a bitter black pill to swallow, but it must be brought forth. All of you, including me, whom have made videos criticizing, reviewing, and mass disliking the Rings of Power, all think that you have all won. But the bitter hard truth is that Amazon won. You were all deceived, just like how the Dark Lord himself deceived all the races of Middle-earth. You see in your eyes making critiques on post-woke era entertainment saying that it's all dying out, but in fact, it is enduring and growing. Now, let me put it to you all like this. Now this is my theory. Maybe major companies and studios have borrowed the playbook on sick people like a certain Onion who have endured YouTube for many years, where it negatively gains much more profit rather than positive feedback. Controversy sells than a great masterpiece. A lot of people focus more on Will Smith slapping Chris Rock rather than the film that won Best Picture. If this keeps going, then it inspires major studios to make shit pieces of work rather than masterpieces like Dune, Pearl, 1917, Squid Game, etc. Now there's nothing wrong with making reviews at all whatsoever, but when everyone is focusing more on the bad, it overshadows on what we consider great and timeless masterpieces. You remember in the late 2000s when M. Night Shyamalan made a shit film after shit film up until few people watched his 2012 release After Earth. After that flop, Shyamalan went on a well-deserved hiatus to restructure on what was wrong up until he made Split, followed up with Glass and his Apple TV Servant. Or how about the disaster that was season 8 of Game of Thrones? D&D never got to work on House of the Dragon up until other people worked on it. If we choose to ignore the shit movies and shows and focus more of the great works of art, it will show us that there is something worth fighting for. That there is some good in this world. Amazon may have made a shit series, but it would never destroy the magic, the beauty, and the legend that was the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So my audience, and everyone watching this, don't waste your time watching Rings of Power or Season 2. Focus on watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Hobbit trilogy. Read the books, explore the lore, enjoy all that is there, because a company is powerless over what we know, love, and cherish. And with that, I think it's safe to say I have said my piece. If I continue to work on this series, I will focus more on works of film that are worth my time than reviewing bad works of entertainment. And that is worth my absolute time. So, what are your guys' thoughts and opinions on Rings of Power? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Are you still gonna dislike bomb and ignore everything that I just said on this massive episode? Leave it all down in the comments below. And stay tuned for more videos to come. I shot the rest of this video on St. Patrick's Day, so 316 is completely over. But I still got this Broken Skull IPA, the best IPA out there because Stone Cold said so. So without further ado, ladies and gents, I'm Atticus the Death Miller. Hope you like this video. Subscribe to this channel. Links down in the description below. Keep it metal. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Have an excellent and blessed day, y'all. And cheers, motherfuckers.